Staffing has been probably the biggest challenge, I would say, for the last couple of years here in multifamily, because it's all about trying to make sure that people stick around. We're all about driving down employee turnover where we can.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Multifamily Mind podcast. My name is Steve Wunch, and I am your host. Excited today to have with us Kara Rice from Swift Bunny. Not only is she one of my favorite people on the planet, but she is chock full of great insight and data. She's got more than 30 years in multifamily roles, ranging from leasing to leadership, with an emphasis on employee development. Kara is fascinated by the intersection of high performance and satisfaction, that sweet spot known as employee engagement. As the VP of Education for Swift Bunny, she worked with multifamily leaders to make the workplace work well for associates. Previously, Kara co-founded and led the curriculum development teams at Grace Hill, the rental housing industry's first e-learning provider. She's a lifelong learner who enjoys helping others to improve their performance. Presenting webinars and at industry conferences is a favorite aspect of her work. She is an NAAEI faculty member, a licensed Florida real estate sales associate, an owner of rental property as well. Kara lives in Southeast Florida with her family of 5 and spends her extra time and money on books and Broadway. Love it. Welcome to the show, Kara Rice.
Hello, my friend. It's a joy to be here with you. Thank you so much.
You're more than welcome. So glad to have you. And I'm so excited to have you here, Kara, because, this is on everybody's radar. I mean, we're going to talk about employee engagement and onboarding and all those things that are so important to the employee experience. And I'm just thrilled because, number one, every time I sit with you or in a room where you're speaking or at a dinner table somewhere, we have conversations and insights are revealed that are just, can really be life-changing for people if they take what you've got to share and apply it to their day-to-day. So I'm thrilled for our audience to be able to hear from you, what's on your mind in terms of the areas of onboarding and engagement. So welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yep. So you guys are often, you just released your 2024 report, and it's chock full of good stuff. We can link to that as well for our listeners so that they know how to find some of the information that's available from Swift Bunny. Do you have to be a customer of Swift Bunny to get some of that information?
No, you do not. This report that you're referring to is our 2024 Employee Engagement Risk Report.
Yep.
And Steve, it's the 3rd year in a row that we've published this, and you do not have to be a customer. It's available right on our website at swiftbunny.com, or as you mentioned, we can link it in the show notes, make it even easier for folks.
Great.
You want me just to describe just a little bit what's in that report?
Yeah,
for
sure.
listeners?
That'd be great. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we are in the employee survey business. We work with management companies and owners to survey their team members year round. And what we do every year is we just take a look at all of the survey data that we have collected from all of the clients that we work with. So it's just a big picture look at how employee sentiments are all across the rental housing landscape. And then we spot the trends. So we really like to focus on 2 things. First, what's working well for people so that you can do more of that. But as the title of the report suggests here, the risk report, we look for what those risk areas are, what's driving people to feel disillusioned with their work, to feel unhappy, and potentially driving them out the door.
Yeah. And you guys have some really, it's a unique proposition that you send out when you ask the questions in that survey. The questions that you're asking team members in regard to their employee experience are to me, they're a bit more thoughtful. They're a bit more employee centric versus like, how satisfied are you with your direct report? Very satisfied, not so satisfied, but the questions are a little bit different. Can you share a little bit on the perspective that you guys bring to even how you're asking some of those questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can't take any credit for that, but we have some really smart people on the team who completely understand research and surveys. Jen Picotti is one of those folks. Doug Miller is the other. So Doug likes to refer to his department as the nerdery. That's where the nerds work. And hallelujah for nerds, because they get it right. Yeah. So there really is a art and a science to asking good survey questions in order that you get useful information. You want the information you get back to be actionable. And I don't know if you've ever taken a stab at writing a survey for any purpose, Steve, but it seems like a simple thing to do. And there's plenty of free tools out there to do it, like SurveyMonkey. But until you have actually done it, you might not realize the minefield that is crafting a good question.
Sure.
So if you're just not skilled at it, you might write a question that leads to really unclear answers. So anyway, I'm grateful for Doug and the others in the nerdery for really having a great approach that gets useful information, because that's what it's all about. You want to get those insights back and be able to distill from what folks have said what that means leadership needs to do more of, do less of, do differently in order to improve that workplace experience for team members, because it's all about trying to make sure that people stick around. We're all about driving down employee turnover where we can.
Yeah. What's the cadence like for you guys in terms of how, so if I'm a owner operator and I'm a partner with Swift Bunny, what is the cadence like for my folks? How many surveys do they get, and at what touch points do those surveys happen?
Yeah, thanks for asking about that. A lot of folks are accustomed to employee satisfaction surveys happening maybe once a year or even every 2 years is a rhythm that a lot of companies do. And we're of the mindset that that's just not frequent enough. Think about the employee turnover in the apartment industry. If you are only collecting feedback once a year, you're going to miss half of your workforce because they're not going to be there in a year's time.
Right.
So when we roll out with a client, what we like to do is survey the entire organization, so we get kind of a benchmark. And then from that point on, they're triggered based on somebody's hire date. So we're going to check in on things like how is the new hire experience? So shortly after hire, they're going to get a survey about that. And then even a little bit, a few months in to hire, we're still gauging how is that onboarding experience for you. And then we've got certain triggers in there, what we call life cycle triggers. So when certain things happen, they're going to be surveyed. For example, if you were a property manager, Steve, and you changed your location, maybe you got a promotion, maybe you moved over to a larger community, we're going to check in on you to find out how was that transition. So we've got moments like that throughout the life cycle of the employee. So we're constantly collecting data. And then another good thing about our system is we use some of the same survey questions throughout the year so that you can compare. In January, we looked like this, and wait a minute, what happened? Because by July, those numbers fell, or you can just see what those trends are.
That's great. So, and listeners, it's that regular cadence of, I call it a cadence of accountability, so that the leadership team is accountable and they know what's happening, especially with the folks that they're not maybe directly connected with on a regular basis. I just love that. So let's kind of parlay that then into our conversations this morning around onboarding and some of the things that you're seeing and hearing that would benefit our listeners this morning.
Yeah, sure. The new hire experience is top of mind for me because I see that as an opportunity for us in multifamily to really improve. So let's back up just a moment. Staffing has been probably the biggest challenge, I would say, for the last couple of years here in multifamily. It's just really, really hard to fill those empty seats on a team.
And is it still primarily leasing and maintenance we find?
Leasing and maintenance, I feel like they're neck and neck. And, I thought we had gotten a little bit better on the leasing side. I worked with 2 different clients last week, and both of them told me, no, we haven't. We're really, really struggling on leasing. And maintenance, I don't know that we've ever made any improvements in maintenance. That's still very much a challenge for just about everybody that I talk to. Yeah. So hiring is hard. But we are also seeing that we're not doing such a great job once we do succeed in hiring. We bring people into the organization and there's a tremendous amount of dissatisfaction and also a tremendous amount of turnover. So given how much effort and how much money you probably put into the hiring process, we just have got to do a better job at that onboarding process so these people actually stick.
Hi, folks. I wanted to take a quick 30-second break so that I could say, I hope you're enjoying today's episode, which couldn't be brought to you without being superpowered by Sales Mail. I mean, really, we couldn't produce this content without them. Sales Mail is the easiest and best tool for sending personalized video via email, text, and CRM. So, if you really are enjoying today's episode, it would mean a lot to me if you would visit salesmail.com so you can check out how our solutions might impact your business communications. And don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn as well. Okay, that's enough. Now back to the conversation.
So get this, Steve. We studied all of our survey data from 2023 at the first of 2024, and we looked back at employee turnover. And it turns out that it's almost 22% of new hires don't even make it to the 90-day mark.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's
right.
Crazy.
Right. So approximately 1 in 5, they're gone before they even made it through a season. And that's so, it's just so expensive. It's costly in so many ways. It takes a toll on morale at that team. Yeah, I talked to a manager this past week who said, you know what, there's this one community where we hired and lost that person, hired and lost that person. We finally just accepted that it's too painful to go through that again. We're just going to run short staff for a while.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm. Right?
That's kind of like cutting off your nose to spite your face.
I know, but on the other hand, I get it because, It takes a lot of work to train somebody up, and they were just not seeing the rewards for that because that person wasn't sticking around long enough to actually be a contributor to the team.
Right. So what are the common themes that you are hearing in terms of those first 90 days and why those folks are slipping through the cracks so easily?
Right. So first and foremost, I think we should talk about loyalty. The world has changed, I would say, since you and I started in this business, and today's workforce. Yeah. I mean, we mentioned earlier, you did in my bio, that I've been around here more than 30 years. And, it just used to be that when you took a job, you expected to stick around for a while, but that's just not really the case any longer. There is not that sense of loyalty as there was in generations past.
Right.
So that's true for the entire workforce, I would say. Plus, given the job market and the labor market right now, there's temptation all around. So people are encountering recruiting messages constantly. So whether they're new to the organization or they are a seasoned team member, they are being tempted by other opportunities constantly.
Yeah.
But particularly for those new hires, I mean, they just really don't have loyalty to the organization yet because they're not fully committed yet. They don't have those relationships. They just got there. So they're more prone to jump. But there's a piece of data I wanted to share with you. This really caught my attention when I saw it recently. It comes from the Gallup organization. So they're not multifamily specific, but they look at businesses, all sorts of businesses, both in the US and internationally. But they published a report titled the 2023 State of the Global Workplace Report. And according to their study, and this is thousands and thousands of employees they talked to, 51% of currently employed workers say they are watching for or actively seeking a new job.
Wow. So
half your workforce, right, has an ear to the ground, or maybe even 1 foot out the door. So we are at high risk of turnover all the time. And as I mentioned earlier, I think it's especially true for those new hires because they're just not fully committed yet.
Yep. And so Gallup is a big organization. They pull companies across multiple industries. You guys are multifamily specific.
Yep.
The thing is, so you're 22% within their first 90 days. Mm-hmm. But that's only the clients that you're surveying. So the numbers could be much more drastic than we're aware of.
That's really a good point. And the companies that we work with, it's sort of self-selecting. They only work with us if they care about the employee experience, right? So I think that's a reasonable suggestion that our client base might be better than average, because these are folks who are really getting feedback from their team members, responding to that feedback, working really hard to try to make the workplace a good experience for their team members. So I think you're absolutely right. It could be higher than that in the general population.
So a couple of things bubbled up to me while you were speaking. The first thing is, so the idea of the long-termness of your job history, right? So a lot of times I'll even look at LinkedIn and I'll see somebody's been, 6 months at this job and 9 months at this job and a year here and maybe a year 0.2 somewhere else. Old school, you and I would be looking at that saying, well, that's a job hopper. I don't want to risk them coming here and me spending all this time and effort to train them and bring them up. And then they just hop the fence in 6 months to a year. Right. So that's one thing. And I think, I don't know how much insight you'll have to this, but like a lot of applicant tracking systems are looking at that as well. Are they not?
I think that's right. I'm not an expert on
not
applicant
100%
tracking,
sure, but
yeah.
So what are your thoughts regarding those folks who appeared to hop, but maybe it's just the behavior of the new workforce,
Absolutely. I think we probably need to really think twice about our old biases like that, because the world has changed. And, behaviors have changed with those who are newer to the workforce. And the labor market has changed dramatically. So where you and I may have frowned upon that in the past, it's understandable in today's climate for a lot of the reasons we've spoken about already, including the fact that because the labor market is so tight, people are getting great job offers, and you kind of can't fault them for being willing to move if it's significantly more pay, a big jump in benefits. But the other thing that we see a lot of is anybody who's got any multifamily experience, they are immediately attractive to other employers. So their own organization, for example, might not think any individual is ready to move, let's say, from leasing to assistant manager. But that community across the street sees that they've got that experience. They might be willing to put that into that next position. So it's just different than it used to be.
Yeah, it is. I was trying to look here this morning. I looked at a post that Brent Williams had done in the Multifamily Insiders page. Sort of similarly along these lines, people are more likely to leave where they're at if they're not getting the development and the training and the tools that they need to succeed at their jobs. So from an onboard, so we're talking really focusing more on the new hire experience this morning. What are some things that you're seeing companies do well that have brought them some return on investment in terms of putting time and resources into creating an onboarding platform that's a bit more thoughtful and robust and really lends itself to creating that sense of loyalty from the get-go?
Right. So first, let's just acknowledge that it's really hard. It's just hard to do it well.
Hear an amen in the audience out there.
And one of the things that's working against you is that you're likely short-staffed. Right? When you're welcoming that new person to your team, you've probably been struggling for a while with an empty seat. And so it's hard to get extra hours in your day to do the training properly. And I absolutely get that. So you have to have systems in place that support you at the community level. It really needs to be a full organization effort. A lot of the times we're seeing that onboarding experience, that new hire experience, is completely left up to the community that's doing the hiring. And I think that's a mistake. You really do need the support from the whole organization, the training department, if you've got one, everybody in the corporate level, can participate by putting systems in place, processes in place to try to help this be consistent from one hire to the next. So it really shouldn't just be reinvented every time a new hire is brought into the organization.
Sure. Yep. And I mean, leveraging resources. A lot of companies don't have, huge teams with lots of resources, especially smaller mom and pop shops that are, already short staffed. So do you see any opportunities to partner like with local affiliate apartment associations for some of that training and development? And
oh, yeah. Yeah, always. I mean, 100% I'm supportive of that. That's always a resource that I would recommend tapping into. Now, on the onboarding side, they're not going to be able to help you deliver that culture piece about your organization. So that's got to come internally. But when it comes to some skill building, absolutely look for all of the resources that you can in that regard.
A lot of what I hear regarding the kind of the new generation workforce is they really want to work for companies that have, social responsibilities. They're involved in the communities in which they operate. What are you guys seeing in terms of that element? It's kind of I want to work for a company that is doing good, not just a company that has 100 properties and, really pretty buildings. It's more of a heart thing versus a financial, even sometimes thing with this new generation. What insights can you share in that regard?
Yeah, I think that's right. And especially with the younger workforce. And I think that it may be not so much a driver for accepting that position, but once you're in an organization, it can really be a driver of satisfaction and of loyalty. Okay. I worked with a client recently. I'll just give them a shout out because they're really great at this. It's Phillips Management Company out of Greensboro, North Carolina. Okay. And I'm really I know. Shout out to Maria Barker and team. Listen to what they do. I'm really moved by it. They offer their team members 4 hours a month for service work. So that's 4 hours paid time a month. That's really generous.
That's crazy.
It's really generous and they mean it. And what I mean by that is they encourage people to take it, so much so that at their annual awards banquet, they have a couple of awards that honor the individuals who made the biggest, most significant contribution via their service work. So it's really wonderful. A part of their culture and it's inspiring to the team members and they care deeply about it.
Yeah. So what do you do then to create this feel of your culture when before you've hired somebody? So, I know I've watched Jennifer Steichakas at Western Wealth do a lot of cool things in terms, and even she and Jen a couple of years ago spoke at Social Media Summit, which was kind of where I really started to follow her and what she's doing. But besides, promoting some of the cultural things that you're doing at your organization on social media venues like LinkedIn and Facebook and Insta, what are you seeing from companies that are being successful? So this example from, was it Price?
Phillips Management.
Yeah. So something similar to that. What are people doing to kind of create that even initial, like, ooh, this sounds like a company that I could, get into. Let me do a little more looking. Right. How do you hook them in?
How do you tell that story?
Yeah. Yeah.
So surely you've heard the expression, pictures or it didn't happen.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. It really is about documenting all of the good parts of your culture and telling that story. And thankfully, you surely have somebody on your team who's really great at that. And you probably have a lot of somebodies who are really great at that because there are many people who live their life on social media anyway. Yep. So I would say tap into those folks to help you tell your company story. And get those pictures on social media because it's inspiring to coworkers, but it is absolutely inspiring to those who are considering employment with your organization. Those folks for sure are checking out your social media. They want to know what it's going to be like to work there. Yep. And, just like renters, they understand the difference between marketing copy and more genuine posts, right? Yep. So they're going to look
versus a real email from someone.
Absolutely. Right. And the social media, sure, that's curated by your marketing department, but it also feels more authentic because it's, tracking actual events and candid photos. And they're going to be looking not just for the stuff that's posted on the company's social pages, but on the employees, if they're tagging the company. And so, I'd say you got to document it all, celebrate it all, and tell your story as much as possible. And that's going to help you.
And it's not just about I've just seen a lot of pics from some big management meetings and summits and quarterly awards or yearly awards programs that are out there. It's the day-to-day stuff too that makes just as much of a powerful impact as these, events that are milestones that happen for companies. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And one thing that I really am bullish on is promotion stories. Because our survey data tells us that people really want to be able to learn and grow, and they want to know what's next for them. So by telling your promotion stories, and what I mean by that is sharing a photograph of an individual who's been promoted, giving a little bit of a blurb about how they got there, what their path looked like, and celebrating that promotion, it's a really smart thing to do. Because not only are you honoring that individual contributor who feels great because they got that recognition on social, but you're also letting everybody else in the organization know, hey, we promote people here. And this is what it takes. This is Jennifer's story or whomever it is. This is how they got there. And that's really instructive for others who are looking to move up. And it's also a very positive thing for job seekers to see that there's opportunity within your organization. There's a lot of companies that do a good job of this. RPM comes to mind. They regularly are celebrating with a big number, and it's always a big number because they're a big organization, but it'll be, let's say, 200 plus promotions this quarter. That's really motivating to somebody who's looking to move up the ladder. I think that's a really smart thing to do.
So kind of creating this social presence on the media streams that people are looking at is really important, and being able to really articulate your company story, sharing core values and mission and vision and all of that is really crucial. But you sort of brought the word up a minute ago, and I want to come back to it because just like a prospect is looking for an apartment, a potential team member is looking for a fit in a company. And our residents are smart enough to do their due diligence and to do all their homework up front so that when they walk through the leasing office door, there's a short list that they're going to go visit in person, right? And it's because these properties have what I'm looking for. They've got the availability. They've got the price I'm looking for. It's all out there online. Our employees are doing the same thing. They're researching our companies. They're getting on our websites. They're looking for the messages that we're telling the world. And I think that to me, the light bulb went off and I'm like, oh my God, this is the same thing as a prospect search for a home is an employee search for a home, right? Yes. Yeah,
100%. You're exactly right. They are a prospective employee behaves much in the way that a prospective resident would. They are looking at all the same things. And in addition to your social presence, they're looking at Glassdoor. They're looking at Indeed. They are reading those reviews, just like those are important to potential residents. I believe that the latest data from Glassdoor says that potential employees or job candidates, they read 6 reviews for a potential employer, and they care deeply about the responses to those reviews. So they really do matter in the same way that reviews matter to potential residents.
Right.
And they're also looking at how you behave in the real world. So I would say that your presence at your local apartment association activities, for example. That really helps and impacts what individuals who are already in the business, what they think about you and your company brand.
Yeah. So a great recommendation for those listening would be like do a due diligence on your digital curb appeal as a company.
Yep.
And take a look at your corporate website and, the stories that you're telling where, companies have about us and you meet the team and all those neat little nuances of the website are there for a reason. And part of the reason is they help to craft this story about your company and its culture and what opportunities exist. So I think for our listeners, whether you're a property manager, on a site or somebody who's part of the corporate support team, marketing and training, or even C-suite folks, really scrub your digital presence and make sure that the story it's telling is the story you want those prospective team members to hear.
I think that's right. And I'd add one more thing to that, Steve. I would encourage you to make sure that it's not so curated that it no longer feels genuine.
Yeah.
And one way to help with that is to actually get more people involved. So to handpick some ambassadors who are real employees in the organization, who are active social media users, who would love to help you tell the story. So, give them some latitude and some freedom to help you get even additional posts on there telling your company story or your community or region story. And that's going to feel even more authentic and exciting and interesting, that folks can actually see what it looks like in the trenches.
Sure. Yeah. And the legal lawyer voice in my head is saying, just make sure you're complying with your company's social media policy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yep.
Because that can turn the ship the wrong direction real quick if you're not careful. So I think about onboarding, and I think, it's an arduous process. Your point earlier, people are probably already short-staffed as it is. Yeah. So that mindset of a warm body is better than nobody. Let's be quick to get that role filled. Those are all things rolling through my head right now. Are you seeing more success with companies that have like a platform? Is Silk Road still out there? It's an onboarding software platform that kind of helps to manage the onboarding process. Or have you seen some tools that are being used that might be of interest to the folks that are listening in regard to helping? Because it's a lot to manage, and it's a lot for just one person in HR or maybe HR and a recruiter to manage that whole workflow. It's a lot, but there are tools out there. What have you seen that's been successful that folks might want to hear about?
So mostly I would say what folks we are working with are using is maybe a Google Sheet.
Okay.
They might have something a little bit more sophisticated in their HR software, but mostly they don't.
Okay.
We do at Swift Bunny, we do have a product that we're rolling out this year that helps with that, and it's called Introduce. So it is designed to help kind of streamline the tasks associated with onboarding, and also get all of those different areas of the company working together. So the different departments, you can assign things out, whether it's IT or whether it's the teammate who sits beside you, they can all be working on that same platform to organize that onboarding experience.
Sure. I've even Googled like onboarding HR onboarding software platforms, and you can look at these different providers, because there are some that are very innovative in their approach, and they've got some neat ways to acknowledge milestones and introducing people to others on the team. But if you took some of those, like I thought you could just take some of those ideas, and you don't have to have a huge budget for it. You don't have to have all the technology to do it, but to be thoughtful, to your point about like a Google spreadsheet that really has a thoughtful laid out plan for what someone should experience in their first 2 weeks, in their first 30 days, in their first 60 and 90 days. That's something that's easy to do. And then I thought back to, those old job, what was I going to call them? New hire checklists.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, here's all the things that a leasing consultant needs to know. How do we plug into their learning and onboarding experience, exposure to these things. And maybe sometimes it goes beyond even their 60, 90-day time frame, but still being thoughtful about all the things. I mean, think about all the things they need to learn. And especially like on the maintenance side of things, I mean, a technician has to know so many different things. Just crafting those things that need to be either seen, experienced, used, and plotting those into without a map, you don't get where you're going, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then one of the challenges there is that the world's changing all the time, and companies are rolling out new tools, new systems constantly. So if you've got something like that, a new hire checklist, hooray, fabulous. However, it could be outdated in 30 days time because, we rolled out this, we deployed that. We're not doing it this way any longer. So yeah, somebody's got to be in charge of maintaining and updating that. But before I lose this thought, I want to share with you, in case anybody's in the market for a good new hire checklist, I've got one. I'll share a link with you so you can put that in the show notes too, Steve.
Okay, that's great. Yep. And I mean, I have 100 that I brought with me from all the different lives I've lived in this business. But to your point,
yep,
most of mine are outdated. Check the peg for pending work orders.
Oh my gosh! Right. That's right.
When we had ledger cards that we wrote on by hand and paper maintenance requests that hung on a pegboard, Lord have mercy, we've come a long way.
Wrote our dinosaur to work.
Yep. And in that regard too, kind of managing the pace of what's rolling your team's way is important as well, because how overwhelming it is to be a new hire to begin with, and then to walk in the door at the property, and now we're in the midst of a software rollout or an initiative that came down from on high, and all of that pressure can also have a negative impact on, those onboarding experiences for team members. I mean, it's a price of doing business. You've got to keep with the times, and you've got to continue to iterate and reiterate. But how do you guys see any insights into how some of that angst that we create ourselves is playing into the dissatisfaction for those new hires?
So it's interesting that you bring that up, because I was just sharing this story with a client last week. But sometimes I think that we are not as truthful as we should be with the new hires. And I get it, because you want them to take the job, right? Yep. So you're putting a really sunny face on this job that you're offering them. But we got some feedback in particular from a maintenance technician who really let it all loose in his survey, stating that he just really kind of felt swindled. Took this new role only to show up and discover that they had something like 150 outstanding work orders.
Oh gosh.
He just walked into a giant mess.
Welcome to success. Not.
Right. Exactly. So, I mean, I get it. That's not the greatest news that you want to share with somebody if you're trying to get them in the door. But on the other hand, they were left with this person who really felt like it had been a bait and switch. So I guess my recommendation there would be opt for some more candor and some more honesty in the hiring process, so that somebody really does have a better sense of what they're walking into. Because I think, this particular individual, he might have been game for that. He just would have preferred to be prepared for that. Heads up. And to know what he was walking into. Yeah.
That's fair. I think that's fair. I wouldn't want to walk into that, nor would you.
No. And it's very possible, if they had been candid, that this individual would have said thanks, but no thanks. And they would have lost that hire. But on the other hand, they're at great risk of losing this hire 30 days in, or whatever the case may be, because they feel like this is not the mess that they thought that they signed up for. And, it's also making them think that their leaders were not honest.
Yeah. That's very telling. Telling. And it's a dance, that's for sure, to paint this pretty picture of enticement that gets them to say yes to the dress. But what a disappointment.
That's right.
And I mean, I would rather them say, no, thanks, I don't want this opportunity, than to bring them in, have them get discouraged and downhearted, probably sow some seeds of negativity amongst the rest of the service team because of how things are, and then quit anyway.
For sure.
There's a much larger loss there than there is up front to be really honest and transparent, and for them to say thanks, but no thanks. I wish you well.
Yeah, I think you're right. And reputationally, you'd take a hit as well, because everybody talks. This person likely talks to all their suppliers who work with all of the others in the market. And yeah, it really would give you a big negative impression, I think, in the marketplace.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so this is like this is like an elephant, the whole concept of onboarding folks and doing it well has been a struggle for years, probably will continue to be a struggle for years. So I've made mention a couple of times, not every company is lucky to have, a ton of headcount, ton of resources, lots of HR and training and support people. So with that in regard, what are some tips or tricks or techniques that you could share with our audience that would help them to, and I'm thinking especially at the site level, not so much the corporate team, but at the site level, what are some things that you could make recommendations to really kind of create some neat moments for onboarding someone well and making them feel like they've, made the right choice, feel good about the role, understand expectations, and ready to mix and mingle.
Yeah, no, that's great. So one of the big things that I think hiring supervisors should do is communicate really well with that new hire before they start. So from the time an individual accepts the job offer to whenever they start, you want to be in contact with that person, because that is kind of a high risk window when this individual, they haven't started yet. So they're not necessarily fully committed, like we talked about earlier, Steve, but also they're probably feeling a little uneasy because starting a new job is a little bit scary, and they may have questions and things that they didn't think about, to ask. So anyway, you want to stay in touch with that individual. And by doing so, you're sharing both that you are excited that they're getting ready to start. You're making yourself available to answer those questions. One of the techniques that I like is for the hiring supervisor to put somebody else into a role. So give them somebody else that they can talk to. Maybe that person is going to be a peer that they'll work with at that community. And so now they know two people at the workplace. So that's great. But also that individual, they probably are more comfortable asking them what might be considered dumb questions, that they don't want the boss to know that they didn't know the answer to. They might feel a little safer talking to that person about, what am I supposed to be wearing? What's the lunch protocol around here? Stuff like that they may not want to trouble the boss with. So putting somebody in touch, staying in touch with them before they start. Another really simple but powerful thing to keep in mind, and I learned this one from Lori Snyder over at Red Peak, and that is to be really thoughtful about when to start somebody.
Yes.
I think that what we tend to do, Steve, is start them ASAP because we need that warm body in place. However, starting them on a Monday morning after a holiday weekend might not be the best move, because it might actually be chaos at your community on that day. And that might not be the best first impression for that individual. Not that you don't want them to be able to function in chaos. They probably do need that skill set, but nobody's going to be available to help them on day one. So I remember Lori telling me that they did an assessment. They tried to figure out when were the peak times, the busiest times at their communities. And from that, they identified the slowest days. And I believe it might have been Tuesday and Wednesday. Don't hold me to that, but something like that. And then they, decided we're only bringing people on board. We're only onboarding them on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, because that's when we can handle it. That's when we have time to pay attention to that individual. So kind of a small thing, but ultimately it's really a big thing, because that first impression matters a great deal.
Oh, completely. Yeah. And I mean, rent week isn't as big of a deal as it used to be back in the day when we got tons of checks in the office. But even still, the first week of the month might not be the best.
Mhm. Yeah.
I remember back at Echelon before it became part of the asset living family. We only hired every other Tuesday was our new hire start date. Uh,
Okay.
I mean, we had to fight for and really win the regional managers over to say we will wait because we know. So let's wait because we know that if we're successful at onboarding this person well and making them feel good about their decision and giving them some time off of the job, like we had them start their compliance training on that first day because we knew when they got to the property they weren't going to have time to do those types of things right away. So, really being mindful of that initial hire moment and when it should happen, how often it should happen. I think that's a great recommendation.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. And you're absolutely right, Steve. It requires discipline. Because you're going to face a lot of pressure from teams to do it on a different day, do it a different time of the month because, this is urgent. But really, I like what you just described, sticking to your guns for all the right reasons about let's start them off successfully. And then you've got greater likelihood that they're actually going to be here in 30 days time, in 90 days time. This is what we're after.
And if you've got a regional office in the market that's hiring the role, what a great place to start them off. That's what so we did our new hire at HQ in Denver so that they got to see, here's the whole company. There's an accounting department and a marketing department and a training department, and they got to meet people within the organization. They got to learn about, career apparel and what the expectations were and when lunch happens and all of that. Wasn't the responsibility of the on-site manager necessarily to deliver, but really letting them kind of feel like, hey, I'm part of something bigger than just my property. That also has a lot of weight in terms of how people feel about the decisions that they make during onboarding.
It absolutely does. And you sounds like you were in an enviable position of working in a market where you had that regional office.
For
Not
sure.
all portfolios have that. And so you got to get creative, but we're good at that.
Look at where we are now with all the virtual digital options that we have. Just like you're able to give a virtual tour to somebody, why not give them a virtual tour of the corporate office and show them all the different, department heads and what they do in their departments and really build something that lets them feel, even though they're not physically at the corporate office, that they are part of something bigger than just what's at the property. Yeah,
100%. And again, parallels to the leasing experience, right? We can do this really well for prospective residents. So let's use those same skills and just redirect them to our prospective
the parallels
employees.
are so vivid. I'm thinking move-in inspection and orientation to the property hardly ever happens.
Right.
They get a piece of paper with things to check off and give it back to us in 72 hours or we'll charge you for it when you move. But like you see all these little nuggets that are part of a successful onboarding of a resident. And we really do tend to pay attention to those pieces. Same thing holds true for the employee experience as well. That's a really funny parallel that I hadn't really struck a chord like it has today.
Absolutely. And, once you start thinking about it that way, it really kind of opens your eyes to all of the opportunities to serve this individual. I mean, they're a customer, they're an internal customer. But let's really look at it that way and figure out how can we serve them every moment from the time, they interview with us until they're on board. How can we make that experience satisfactory for them?
Yep. I mean, we've got a renewal strategy and it probably starts 120 days before their lease expires, that we've got these specific touch points where we're reaching out to the resident to ensure their satisfaction. Why would we not want to do the same thing? Because we want an employee to renew with us, say yes to the dress for another year. It's really interesting to think about it in terms of how much of a parallel is going on at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you and I have both worked in the business long enough that there were times that we didn't have to go to that much trouble for team members, because if they left, big deal, we'd fill that seat. That's not the case anymore. It really isn't. So we just have to work harder at this and be better at this. And ultimately, I think it does improve our workplace, putting that extra effort in there. I do think that it is a good thing ultimately.
I mean, it can't help but benefit you to bring somebody into the organization the right way. Be thoughtful about it. Have tools that will help you support that process and be consistent so that you're doing it the same way with everybody every time. Really having a clear and concise and truthful message about your culture and who you want the world to see you as in your social channels and your digital presence. But I would mirror the resident experience and see where there's opportunities for you to plug things into the employee experience that would have just as much value as they do to a resident.
Yep, that's exactly right. And ultimately what you're aiming for here is, I call it the 3 C's of onboarding. You want to build some competence with those individuals because you need them to contribute as quickly as they can. So you got to get them their training, their skills, so that they can be a contributor. You want to build some camaraderie because, integrating them with the team is hugely important. They need to have not just their supervisor, but others within the organization that they can lean on to get the answers to their questions, to help them get their work done. And then the final one is the confidence. You want them to feel like, hey, I can contribute here. I think I'm going to be good at this. I think I'm going to be able to deliver. I know what I'm going to say when I have to pick up that phone or when the resident opens the door or whatever the case may be. You want them to feel confident in their own competence. And that camaraderie helps as well, because then they've got a team that they can lean on to help them with all of it.
Love it. Love it. Those are great. Can you repeat those again? Just the 3 C's?
The 3 C's. So it's competence, camaraderie, and confidence.
Love it. That's a great formula for success for sure.
All of your onboarding activities, they should lead to those 3 goals for the onboarding experience. I love the idea of tapping into others in the organization who can help you. You might even formalize it by making it a culture committee, where they are the warm welcome group that helps you make that great first impression. And even small things make a big difference, Steve. My husband, for example, he started a new job last summer, and somebody at his office took the time to create a little password journal for him. So they set up his access to the email, to like all of the systems that they use. They established that for him before he got there, and they wrote it all down. And it was like in a little notebook on his desk area when he started. What a gift, right? Yep. It's a small thing, but it's absolutely huge. Right. A move-in gift. Yeah. Well, and that's another area too. We typically do move-in gifts for new residents, a little something like that, that says, welcome, we are celebrating your arrival. It doesn't have to be expensive. Logo swag is a great one. Everybody likes to get the merch from the company, that shows they're a member of the club now. So that kind of stuff is great.
When I was at Capital Square Living, we were transitioning properties into in-house management from third-party partners. And, we were a new brand, Capital Square Living, and every team member on their first day as a Capital Square Living employee had a swag box. And if they were on the service team, they had 2 branded polos. They had a hat. They had their ID badges were already done, because part of our onboarding process was a QR code went out. The QR code had a link for them to tell us their shoe size, their shirt size, to upload a face pic that was a nice face pic that we could use for their badge. So we had all of that information before they even came to day one. So that on day one, they got a package with their name on it. It had a little bit of swag, nothing too extravagant. Polos for them to wear so that they were branded and so that people would know who they worked for. And when they came knocking at the door, they would recognize it. Their maintenance badges, their business cards were pre-printed, and they were in the boxes as well. That was for every single role: housekeeper, groundskeeper, leasing, service, everybody. And it was a huge thing to people. And it really made... we were creating something new, so that's part of the reason we were able to do that. But, I think get creative and it just shows you're intentionally making this, you're as excited about it as they are.
Right.
You are so happy to have them. And that's like the first demonstration of your culture and your service level to your team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that, what you just outlined, and starting it all off with that QR code that leads to the ordering process. That's really smart. And listen, I will just say, you mentioned you were new, so maybe your budget was a little more generous than others, but you can do a version of this at every price point.
Oh, sure.
You really can.
Yeah. Yeah. And even reach out to some of your supplier partners and say, hey, would you want to be a sponsor of our new hire kit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, love that. Love that. Listen, one of my cheap solutions, the way you can inexpensively brand absolutely everything, is stickers. You get a sticker with your community name on it, or a company name on it, whatever it is. Sincerely, you can put a sticker on anything, on a folder. We used to do them on site on the rolls of toilet paper, right? All of a sudden, that's personalized, customized, and that is inexpensive.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny how all those things you think about. It doesn't take a whole lot of money. It takes time, effort, and intention,
right.
Those things to make it right. All right. So this has been a great conversation. I think we could probably talk for another hour, but I'm going to go ahead and wrap this session up with a question to you. Here at the Multifamily Mind, we ask all of our guests the same question, and we ask it in the same way, so we're consistent as well. And this question is, what is your most audacious take on multifamily? And for the purposes of this podcast, we define the word audacious as extremely bold or daring, recklessly brave, like a fearless explorer, someone who's going to spelunk a cave no matter how deep, dark, and dangerous it might be, because it needs to be spelunked, or climb that mountain no matter how high it is, it needs to be climbed. So that's audacious to us here. What's an audacious take that you have, my dear, for multifamily today?
Okay, thank you. Well, keep me out of the caves. I like to be, I like to see the horizon.
Surface level.
Know where my oxygen's coming from. Thank you.
You're right.
But let's see. I did get a little heads up on this because I've seen other episodes. But what I am choosing to share here with you, my take on this, is that I think that there is audacious opportunity in multifamily. I really do. And I feel like the world is your oyster in multifamily. You can start in leasing, you can start in groundskeeping, and you can end up absolutely on top of the world. There is so much opportunity to be had in our business. First of all, housing is everywhere. So wherever you go, wherever life should take you, if you've got experience in multifamily, you are well on your way to employment at whatever far-flung corner of the world you may land.
Yep.
But also in multifamily, you can do so many things. And Steve, you're a terrific example of this. I actually don't know what is your origin story. What was your very first position in multifamily?
I was a leasing consultant in Atlanta.
Okay. All right. So you and I both started in leasing. And I moved my way through all of those various on-site positions up to multi-site manager. And then I jumped over to the training department. I worked in training and marketing and recruiting. And then I crossed that fence over to the supplier side, which is something that I know you've done, and you've gone back and forth a few times. But I had no idea when I started as leasing just how many different roles I would have during the course of my multifamily career. But that's what I would like to tell folks who are thinking about entering the business, who are maybe new in the business, is you can take it as far as you want to take it, because the opportunities are there. There is absolutely no reason to think that you're going to dead end or be bored in multifamily, because if you're getting a little tired with your portfolio, find a different portfolio that's like a different aspect, different type of housing. Maybe you want to tackle student housing. Maybe you want to tackle senior living, something you haven't done yet. Or take a walk on the wild side and join us over here on the supplier side, where the view is a little different, but the skills translate.
They sure do.
There's really just no limit to the opportunities I think that multifamily has to offer. And I'm really glad I stumbled in all those years ago.
Me too. Me too. And as audacious as that might sound, it also parlays into exactly what we talked about today. When you onboard someone, letting them see how amazing a career in this industry can be and all the different directions that you could take. It's going to be safe for another episode, Kara, because I want to talk with you about squiggly job paths.
Oh,
because
great.
we're from the old school where it was leasing, assistant, community, regional. That was your path, and that was the predetermined road that you were to walk. And it's very different these days. So I look forward to another conversation with you soon.
Good. I would love to do it. Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome. Well, this has been Steve Wunch here with Kara Rice. You're listening to the Multifamily Mind, powered by Sales Mail. So glad you were able to join us today, and I can't wait to see you next time. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Multifamily Mind podcast, brought to you by Sales Mail, the easiest way to send personalized video via email, text, and CRM. To learn more, go to salesmail.com. And remember, always be audacious. Until next time, I'm Steve Wunch. Have a great week.